I have watched people walk into my courtroom with anger, fear, arrogance, and sometimes even desperation. But Karen Whitmore walked in with something far more dangerous. She walked in with a story she wanted the whole world to believe. She claimed I had humiliated her. She claimed the courtroom had laughed at her. She claimed I had destroyed her dignity in front of everyone. But seconds later, when the CCTV appeared on the screen, the truth did not just challenge her story. It destroyed it. Before we go any further, make sure you have subscribed to this channel for more powerful courtroom stories like this one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Also, comment below and tell us where you are watching this video from. Now let me take you back to where this case truly began. Her name was Karen Whitmore. She was 47 years old, sharply dressed, expensive handbag on the table, sunglasses resting on top of her blonde hair, and a face that carried the confidence of someone who had practiced her outrage before arriving. I noticed that immediately, real pain usually enters a courtroom quietly. Manufactured outrage enters with volume. Karen had volume. She looked at the gallery before she looked at me. She scanned the spectators as if she wanted witnesses for a performance. Then she sat down, crossed her arms, and whispered something to her attorney that made him look uneasy. Across from her sat a young courthouse clerk named Emily Dawson. Emily was 26, nervous, pale, and clearly uncomfortable being in the center of attention. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. She kept her eyes down, not because she was hiding something, but because she looked exhausted from being accused of something she knew she had not done. The case began with Karen's complaint. She claimed that during a previous court visit for a minor neighborhood dispute, courthouse staff had mistreated her, mocked her, and allowed her to be humiliated in public. She claimed Emily Dawson had laughed at her near the security checkpoint. She claimed I had made insulting remarks from the bench. She claimed the whole courthouse had treated her like entertainment, and she wanted damages. But as I reviewed the file, something felt wrong. Not because complaints against court staff are impossible. People in authority can make mistakes. Staff can behave poorly. Judges can be misunderstood. A courtroom must never dismiss a complaint simply because it is uncomfortable. But Karen's statement was too polished, too dramatic, too perfect. She remembered every insult, every glance, every laugh, every detail that made her look innocent, and everyone else look cruel. Yet she could not remember one simple thing, the exact time it happened, that bothered me, because truth often carries small imperfections. Lies often arrive fully edited. I asked Karen to explain what happened in her own words. She stood before I asked her to stand. That was the first sign she wanted control of the room. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound wounded. "I came to this courthouse expecting fairness. Instead, I was laughed at, mocked, and humiliated like I was some kind of criminal." Emily's eyes lifted for half a second, then dropped again. Karen continued, saying Emily had smirked at her as she passed through security. She claimed another officer whispered about her outfit. She claimed people in the gallery laughed when she was corrected about courtroom procedure. Then she looked directly at me, and you allowed it. The courtroom went still. I have been accused before. That is part of the job. A judge cannot be fragile. But there is a difference between criticism and manipulation. Karen did not sound like a person describing humiliation. She sounded like a person building a trap, and at that moment, I did not yet know who the trap was for. Emily Dawson's attorney, Rachel Morgan, stood calmly and asked Karen one question. "Ms. Whitmore, are you saying this humiliation happened before the hearing, during the hearing, and after the hearing?" Karen nodded quickly. "Yes, the entire time." Rachel looked down at her notes. "The entire time?" "Yes," Karen said. "They all participated. That answer mattered. In court, broad accusations can be emotionally powerful, but legally dangerous. The wider the lie becomes, the more evidence it needs to survive. Rachel then asked, "Did anyone physically touch you?" "No." "Did anyone use profanity toward you?" Karen hesitated. "No, but humiliation doesn't require profanity." Rachel nodded. "Did Judge Judy call you a name?" Karen's eyes moved toward me. She didn't have to. Her tone said enough. There it was, tone. A word people often use when the facts are too weak to carry the accusation. I watched Emily then. She was breathing slowly, trying to stay composed, but I saw the hurt in her face. She was not a powerful person. She was a clerk, a young woman doing her job. And now she was being accused publicly by someone who knew how damaging an accusation could be. Karen sat down with satisfaction in her eyes. She believed she had won the emotional battle. But court is not won by emotion alone. Rachel Morgan opened a folder and said, "Your Honor, we have requested and received courthouse CCTV from that morning." Karen's head turned, not slowly, quickly. Too quickly. I saw the first crack in her confidence. Rachel continued, "The footage covers the security entrance, the hallway outside this courtroom, and the clerk's desk." Karen immediately said, "That footage won't show how they made me feel." I leaned forward. "No, Miss Whitmore, but it may show what actually happened." For the first time since entering my courtroom, Karen had no response. And that silence told me we were about to see something important. The monitor was turned toward the courtroom. The first CCTV clip loaded. Karen stared at the screen. Emily Dawson closed her eyes. And I remember thinking, before the footage even played, that someone's entire story was about to collapse in front of everyone. Then the video began. The CCTV began with silence, no dramatic sound. No courtroom argument, just a wide camera view of the courthouse security entrance at 8:42 in the morning. And there was Karen Whitmore. She entered through the glass doors, wearing the same red coat she had described in her complaint. Her sunglasses were on top of her head. Her handbag was over her arm. She paused near the metal detector, looked around, and then did something I found immediately interesting. She checked her phone camera, not her messages, not the time. Her camera, the footage, showed her turning slightly, adjusting her hair, and angling the phone toward herself as if she wanted to record the moment. Rachel Morgan paused the video. "Ms. Whitmore," she asked, "were you recording inside the courthouse that morning?" Karen's jaw tightened. "No," she said. Rachel looked back at the screen. "Then what are we seeing here?" Karen gave a sharp breath. "I was checking my appearance." That answer was possible, but not convincing. Rachel let the footage continue. Karen approached the security officer. The officer pointed politely toward the tray for bags and personal items. Karen did not move right away. Instead, she leaned forward and said something. The CCTV had no audio, but her body language was clear. Finger raised, chin lifted, shoulders squared. The officer remained calm. Then Emily Dawson appeared at the edge of the frame, holding a stack of files. She stopped near the desk, waited for Karen to clear security, and said nothing. Rachel paused the footage again. "Ms. Whitmore, is that the moment you claim Miss Dawson laughed at you?" Karen looked at the screen. "Yes." The entire room watched Emily in the frozen frame. Her face was neutral, her mouth closed, her eyes directed down toward the files in her hands. Rachel said, "For the record, Your Honor, Ms. Dawson is not looking at Ms. Whitmore." Karen snapped, "You can't see attitude on CCTV." That was the second time she had shifted the accusation away from facts and into feelings. At that point, I understood the strategy more clearly. Karen was not trying to prove one specific insult. She was trying to make every neutral action appear cruel, every normal instruction appear hostile, every procedure appear personal. That kind of accusation is difficult because it hides behind emotion. An emotion, while real to the person experiencing it, cannot automatically become evidence against someone else. The clip continued. Karen placed her handbag on the tray. The officer asked her to remove something from it. Karen threw both hands into the air. People behind her waited patiently. Nobody laughed. Nobody pointed. Nobody whispered. Then Karen turned toward the line behind her and said something. Several people stepped back, not amused, uncomfortable. Rachel paused the video again. Would you agree, Miss Whitmore, that at this point you were arguing with security? Karen crossed her arms. I was standing up for myself. I have heard that phrase many times. Sometimes it is true. Sometimes it means I refuse to follow the same rule everyone else followed. The footage moved to the hallway camera. Karen walked toward the courtroom doors. Emily passed behind her carrying files. Karen suddenly stopped and turned around. Emily nearly bumped into her, then stepped back quickly. Karen pointed at Emily. Emily raised one hand in apology. The apology was visible even without audio. Karen claimed Emily had mocked her, but the video showed Emily trying to avoid conflict. Margaret, no, not Margaret in this case. Emily Dawson sat in court watching the footage with tears in her eyes. I noticed her trying not to wipe them away because she did not want Karen to see how badly the accusation had hurt her. That stayed with me. People think false accusations only threaten careers. They also damage dignity. They force innocent people to sit quietly while their character is attacked in public. Rachel then introduced a written statement from the security officer, Daniel Hayes, who had been on duty that morning. He wrote that Karen had refused to place her phone in the tray, insisted she was being targeted, and told staff she would make everyone regret embarrassing her. Karen objected immediately. He's lying. Rachel turned to her. So the clerk is lying, the officer is lying, the hallway footage is misleading, and the judge's courtroom was unfair. Karen stared at her. Yes, she said. The room went quiet. That kind of answer can sound strong to an audience at first, but in court, when one person claims every independent person and every camera is wrong, the question becomes simple. What is more likely, that everyone joined together for no reason, or that one person cannot tolerate being corrected? I watched Karen closely. Her breathing was faster now. Her hands were gripping the table edge, but her eyes still burned with defiance. She was not ready to stop. Rachel moved to the next clip. This one showed the hallway outside my courtroom. Karen stood near the door before her earlier hearing. She was speaking to another woman, later identified as Olivia Bennett, a witness in the hallway for a completely different case. Karen claimed in her complaint that strangers had laughed at her because courthouse staff encouraged it. But the footage showed Karen approaching Olivia first. Karen leaned close. Olivia stepped back. Karen pointed toward the courtroom doors. Olivia shook her head and tried to leave. Rachel paused the screen. Ims Whitmore, do you know this woman? Karen said no. Then why were you speaking to her? Karen hesitated. I don't remember. That was the first time she did not have an immediate answer, and I could feel the courtroom notice it too. Rachel resumed the footage. Karen moved closer to Olivia again. Olivia lifted both hands in a clear gesture of discomfort. Then Emily Dawson came into the hallway and gently directed Karen away from the witness. No shouting. No humiliation, no public mockery, just a clerk trying to keep order in a courthouse hallway. Karen whispered, "That's edited." Rachel did not even look at her. "It is certified courthouse footage," she said. Then came the moment that began to turn the case from complaint into exposure. The clip showed Karen stepping away from Emily, taking out her phone and recording herself in the hallway. She held the phone close to her face. Her mouth moved dramatically. Then she turned the camera toward Emily. Emily immediately raised her hand, not aggressively, but in a clear request not to be filmed. Karen kept recording. The bailiff in the footage approached and pointed toward a posted sign, "No, a recording beyond this point." Karen looked directly at the sign, then kept filming. Rachel froze the video on that frame. Karen's face hardened. And I knew then that the humiliation she described had not started because staff mistreated her. It started because someone finally told her no. The courtroom remained fixed on that frozen CCTV image. Karen Whitmore stood in the hallway, phone raised, filming a courthouse employee beside a sign that clearly said recording was not allowed. That image mattered, not because it proved everything, but because it showed the beginning of the truth. Karen had not been humiliated because someone attacked her dignity. She had felt humiliated because the rules applied to her, and some people experience boundaries as insults. Rachel Morgan let the clip continue. The bailiff on the footage pointed again toward the sign. Emily Dawson stood behind him, holding her files close to her chest. She looked uncomfortable, not powerful. She was not laughing. She was not mocking. She was trying to disappear from the confrontation. Karen, however, stepped closer. Even without audio, you could see the force of her words. Her mouth moved quickly. Her free hand pointed toward Emily, then toward the courtroom doors, then toward the camera she was holding. The bailiff remained calm. Then Karen suddenly turned her phone toward her own face. Rachel paused. "Miss Whitmore," she asked, "were you recording a video about courthouse staff before your hearing even began?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "I don't remember." That answer told me she remembered perfectly. People forget exact times. They forget minor details. They rarely forget whether they filmed themselves inside a courthouse while accusing employees of mistreating them. Rachel opened another folder. "Your Honor, we subpoenaed the video Miss Whitmore posted that same afternoon." Karen's attorney shifted in his chair. Karen looked at him quickly, and there it was again. That flash of panic she tried to bury beneath anger. I allowed the video to be introduced. It appeared on the screen beside the CCTV still. This time, the court heard Karen's voice clearly. "I just walked into this courthouse," she said in the video, "and these people are already targeting me. The clerk laughed at me. The bailiff threatened me. And trust me, Judge Judy is going to hear about it." The video ended. Rachel asked, "Mrs. Whitmore, was that posted before your hearing?" Karen said nothing. Rachel answered for the record. The timestamp shows it was posted at 9:04 a.m. Her hearing began at 9:27. The courtroom absorbed that slowly. Karen had publicly claimed she was targeted before the hearing had even started. Before I said a word, before Emily had done anything beyond ask her not to record. Before the courtroom even had a chance to become the place Karen later described. I looked at Karen then, and what I saw was not embarrassment. It was resentment. She resented being caught. That is different from remorse. Rachel then asked Emily Dawson to testify. Emily stood carefully, as if every movement might be judged. Her voice was soft, but steady enough. She explained that she had worked in the courthouse for 3 years. Her job was to manage documents, guide visitors, and help keep the hallway clear before hearings. She said Karen arrived upset, refused to follow security instructions, and began recording staff members. Emily said she asked Karen politely to stop filming near restricted areas. Karen interrupted. "You weren't polite." I turned toward her, Ms. Whitmore. She looked away. Emily continued. She said Karen called her little courthouse girl and told her she would be famous by the end of the day. Emily said she felt intimidated, but tried not to react because courthouse staff are trained to stay calm. Rachel asked Emily, "Did you laugh at Ms. Whitmore?" "No," Emily said. "Did you insult her?" "No." "Did you tell anyone else to laugh at her?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "No, I would never do that." Karen shook her head. "She's acting." I leaned forward. "You are very close to losing the court's patience." For the first time, she stopped, not because she accepted responsibility, because she understood consequences were getting closer. Rachel then played the next CCTV clip. It showed the inside of the courtroom from the previous hearing. The angle was high and wide. You could see Karen standing at the defendant's table. You could see me on the bench. You could see Emily at the clerk's station. Karen claimed in her complaint that when I corrected her, the entire courtroom laughed. The footage showed something else. Karen spoke over the plaintiff. I raised my hand. Karen kept talking. I instructed her to wait her turn. She rolled her eyes and threw her papers onto the table. A few spectators looked down. Nobody laughed. Rachel paused the video. Ms. Whitmore, where is the laughter? Karen's face tightened. You can't hear it. Rachel nodded. That is correct. The courtroom CCTV has no audio, but we can see the faces of everyone in the room. She zoomed in slowly. The gallery was silent. The plaintiff looked tense. Emily looked down at her paperwork. The bailiff stood still. No laughing faces. No pointing. No public ridicule. Rachel asked, is it possible, Miss Whitmore, that people were not laughing at you at all? Karen leaned forward. No, I know what I felt. And there it was again. Feeling replacing fact. I do not say this lightly. Feelings matter. Humiliation can be real, even when others do not intend it. But a feeling becomes dangerous when someone uses it to punish innocent people. Karen had taken discomfort and turned it into accusation. She had taken correction and called it abuse. She had taken normal courtroom procedure and tried to make it look like a conspiracy. The conflict sharpened when Rachel introduced one more piece of evidence from the previous hearing, a written warning issued to Karen for attempting to record inside the courtroom. Karen had signed it. Her signature was clear at the bottom. Rachel placed it on the projector. Ms. Whitmore, you signed this document acknowledging you were warned not to record, correct? Karen looked at it. Then she said, I was forced. Thomas Reed closed his eyes again. I saw it. He knew how bad that sounded. Rachel asked, who forced you? Karen pointed toward Emily. She pressured me. Emily looked stunned. Rachel did not raise her voice. She simply returned to the CCTV. The clip showed Emily sliding the warning form across the desk. Karen grabbed the pen, signed aggressively, and pushed it back. Emily never touched her, never leaned over her, never blocked her path. Rachel froze the image. Is this the pressure you are describing? Karen said nothing. For the first time that day, her silence lasted longer than a few seconds. The courtroom felt the truth getting closer. But the real turn came when Rachel called the next witness, Olivia Bennett. The woman Karen had approached in the hallway. Olivia stepped forward slowly and took the oath. She looked nervous, but there was something in her expression that told me she had been waiting to speak. Rachel asked her what happened that morning. Olivia looked directly at Karen and said, she asked me to pretend I saw the clerk laugh at her. Karen's head snapped up, and suddenly, the case was no longer just about CCTV. It was about a story Karen had tried to manufacture before the truth could stop her. Olivia Bennett's words sat in the courtroom like a heavy object nobody wanted to touch. She asked me to pretend I saw the clerk laugh at her. Karen's face changed instantly, not into fear, into anger. That difference matters. Fear asks, what happens now? Anger says, how dare you expose me? I looked at Olivia carefully. She was a woman in her early 30s, a medical receptionist, and she had been at the courthouse that morning for a completely unrelated landlord dispute. She did not know Emily Dawson. She did not work for the courthouse. She had no reason to protect me, no reason to protect the clerk, and no reason to involve herself in Karen's storm. That made her testimony important. Rachel Morgan asked Olivia to explain exactly what Karen had said. Olivia swallowed, then looked down at her hands. She came up to me in the hallway and asked if I had seen how rude the clerk was being. I said I hadn't noticed anything. Then she said, well, you saw her laugh, right? I told her no. And she said, you don't have to be scared. Just say what you saw. Karen shook her head. That never happened. Olivia kept going. She told me courthouse employees get away with everything unless normal people stand together. Then she asked for my name and number so she could include me as a witness. Rachel asked, did you give it to her? No, Olivia said, because it felt wrong. I watched Karen's attorney then. Thomas Reed had stopped taking notes. He was just listening now. There are moments when an attorney realizes the case he prepared is no longer the case happening in front of him. This was one of those moments. Rachel turned back to the CCTV. The hallway clip showed Karen leaning toward Olivia, speaking intensely. Olivia stepped backward twice. Karen stepped forward twice. Then Emily Dawson entered the hallway, and the interaction ended. The body language matched Olivia's testimony perfectly. No audio was needed. Karen whispered something to Thomas. Thomas shook his head. She whispered again. He leaned away. Then Karen did something that confirmed exactly what I had been sensing since the beginning. She stopped letting her attorney protect her. She stood up and said, Your Honor, this is ridiculous. These people are all twisting everything. I told her to sit down. She did, but only halfway, still leaning forward like she wanted to fight the entire room. Rachel then introduced the next layer of evidence. Screenshots Karen had posted online after the previous hearing, claiming she had been publicly humiliated by courthouse staff. The post had spread through a local community group. In it, she named Emily Dawson directly. She called her cruel, unprofessional, and power-hungry. Emily lowered her head as the post appeared on the screen. I saw her hands shaking. That is the part people sometimes forget about online accusations. The internet feels like a crowd to the person posting, but it feels like a courtroom without rules to the person being attacked. Rachel read several comments from under Karen's post. People had called Emily disgusting. They had called for her to be fired. One person had posted Emily's workplace schedule. Another had written, someone should teach that clerk a lesson. Emily wiped her cheek quickly. Karen looked away, but not with shame, with annoyance. Rachel asked, Ms. Whitmore, did you delete this post after learning Ms. Dawson was receiving threats? Karen said, I didn't tell anyone to threaten her. That was not my question. Karen's mouth tightened. No. Rachel asked, tightened. Why not? Karen leaned back. Because people deserve to know what happened. I could feel the courtroom's patience thinning. Karen still believed the power of her feelings mattered more than the damage done to another human being. Rachel then displayed the CCTV from inside the courthouse lobby after the hearing. Karen was seen walking out, phone in hand, speaking into the camera again. She passed Emily near the clerk's station and turned the phone toward her face. Emily stepped back. Karen followed. The bailiff approached. Karen lowered the phone just enough to pretend compliance, then raised it again as she exited the door. Rachel paused the footage. This is after you signed the no recording warning. Correct. Karen did not answer. Rachel repeated the question. Karen finally said, I had a right to document abuse. I leaned forward. Ms. Whitmore, you had a right to file a complaint. You did not have a right to harass a courthouse employee. For once, Karen looked directly at me and said nothing, but the case was not finished. Rachel asked Emily whether she had any contact with Karen after the post went online. Emily nodded. Her voice broke slightly. She sent me a message. Karen turned sharply. Rachel asked permission to introduce it. The message appeared on the screen. It read, You laughed when I was embarrassed. Now everyone is laughing at you. The courtroom became completely silent. There are lines in a case that reveal motive more clearly than any argument ever could. That message was one of them. Karen had not wanted justice. She had wanted revenge. And now, Every piece of evidence was pointing in the same direction. The CCTV, the online post, the witness testimony, the message, the signed warning, the false claim that I had allowed humiliation from the bench. All of it began to form a picture Karen could no longer explain away. But then Rachel Morgan requested a brief pause before presenting the final CCTV angle. She said, "This one came from a camera Karen did not know existed." Karen's eyes locked onto her, and for the first time I saw genuine fear. Rachel Morgan said the final CCTV angle came from a camera Karen did not know existed. That single sentence changed Karen's entire face. Until then, she had been angry, defensive, defiant. But now, beneath the hard expression, I saw something different. Calculation. She was trying to remember where she had stood, where she had pointed her phone, what she had said, and whether the camera could have captured what she hoped nobody would ever see. That is the thing about people who build false stories. They do not fear truth in general. They fear the one angle they forgot to control. Rachel explained that the camera was positioned above the side corridor near the clerk's records window. It did not face the main hallway directly, which was why it had not been reviewed at first. But after Olivia Bennett testified, courthouse security pulled every available angle from that morning. Karen whispered, "This is harassment." Nobody responded, because by then, even her own outrage had started to sound tired. The footage appeared on the screen. At first, it showed nothing unusual. A quiet corridor, a records window, a bench against the wall. Then Karen entered the frame, phone in her hand. She looked over her shoulder once. Then again, that was important. People who are simply upset do not always check for witnesses. People who are planning something usually do. Emily Dawson appeared from the opposite side, carrying files. She stopped when Karen stepped in front of her. The video had no audio, but the body language was enough to tighten the whole courtroom. Karen moved closer. Emily stepped back. Karen raised her phone. Emily shook her head and lifted one hand, clearly asking her not to film. Karen leaned in closer. Then suddenly, Karen pulled her own coat collar downward, messed up her hair with one hand, and turned the phone camera toward her face. The courtroom froze. Rachel paused the video. Nobody spoke, not even Karen, because everyone understood what we had just seen. Karen had made herself look distressed before recording her accusation. Rachel let the footage continue. Karen held the phone close and began speaking into it. Her free hand moved dramatically to her chest. She looked like a woman reporting abuse, but the CCTV showed the seconds before that performance. It showed no insult, no laughter, no humiliation, only preparation. Then Emily tried to walk around her. Karen blocked her path. Emily stepped back again. Karen kept filming. The bailiff appeared at the far end of the hallway. The moment Karen saw him, she changed. Her shoulders dropped. Her face tightened. Her hand trembled just enough to look afraid. And then she pointed at Emily. Rachel stopped the video again. The courtroom was completely silent. This was the viral moment. Not because Karen shouted, not because someone cried, but because the CCTV revealed what her own video had hidden. Her story began after she created the scene. Rachel then played Karen's phone video from the same moment. On Karen's video, the angle was tight, only her voice, her face shaken. "She won't leave me alone," Karen said. "The clerk is harassing me. I feel unsafe." Then she turned the phone toward Emily for half a second. Emily appeared startled, uncomfortable, and silent. The video ended. Rachel placed both clips side by side. On one side, Karen's version. On the other, the courthouse CCTV. One showed a frightened woman. The other showed a woman manufacturing fear. I looked across the courtroom and saw Emily Dawson crying quietly, not because she had won, because she had finally been seen. Karen stared at the screen And for a few seconds, she had no words left. Then she made the mistake that destroyed whatever remained of her defense. She said, "I had to make people understand how she made me feel." That sentence was not an explanation. It was an admission. Rachel turned slowly. "So you staged the video?" Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I didn't stage anything." Rachel pointed to the screen. "You pulled your collar down. You messed up your hair. You blocked Miss Dawson's path. Then you recorded yourself saying she was harassing you." Karen shook her head. But there was no strength in it now. "She embarrassed me first." Rachel asked, "How?" Karen's eyes filled with rage. "She told me I couldn't record, and there it was, the truth, plain and small. No public mocking, no judge-led humiliation, no courthouse conspiracy. Just one courthouse clerk telling Karen Whitmore she could not break the rules." That was the humiliation Karen could not forgive. I have seen this before. Some people do not want equality under the rules. They want exemption from them. And when they are denied that exemption, they call it abuse. Rachel then delivered the final blow. She showed the timeline. 8:42, Karen entered courthouse. 8:51, Karen argued at security. 8:58, Karen recorded near restricted hallway 9-4. Karen posted online claiming staff were targeting her 9:27. Her hearing began 9:44. She signed the no recording warning 10:3. She filmed Emily again 10:11. She posted the edited video. The timeline was devastating. Karen had claimed the humiliation happened throughout the hearing, but her public accusation began before the hearing. She had claimed Emily followed and harassed her, but CCTV showed Karen blocking Emily. She had claimed I allowed people to laugh, but the courtroom footage showed no laughter. She had claimed she wanted accountability, but her message to Emily said something else entirely. Now everyone is laughing at you. That was not accountability, that was revenge. Karen's attorney finally stood and asked for a moment to speak with his client. I allowed it, but Karen refused to listen. She stood up, pointed toward the screen, and said, "You people are twisting this because you hate women who speak up." The courtroom reacted instantly, not with anger, with exhaustion, because everyone had watched the truth. Everyone had seen the preparation. Everyone had seen the performance. Everyone had seen the damage. I told Karen to sit down. She refused. The bailiff stepped closer. And then Emily Dawson, the young clerk Karen had tried to destroy, spoke one sentence that cut through the entire room. "You didn't want people to hear the truth. You wanted them to hate me." Karen turned toward her. For the first time, Karen had no comeback, and that silence said more than any confession could. Emily Dawson's sentence changed the courtroom more than any legal argument could have. "You didn't want people to hear the truth. You wanted them to hate me." Karen turned toward her with anger in her eyes, but she had no answer. That was the first honest silence Karen had given the court all day. I looked at Emily, and I saw a young woman who had been forced to defend her dignity against a story designed to destroy her. She had not asked for attention. She had not insulted anyone. She had simply done her job, followed courthouse rules, and asked a visitor not to record where recording was prohibited. For that, Karen had tried to turn her into a villain. That is why this case stayed with me. Not because the accusation was loud, but because it was calculated. Karen did not just misunderstand a moment. She built a version of events that punished innocent people for placing limits on her behavior. She used emotion like evidence, social media like a weapon, and public sympathy like a courtroom she could control. But real courtrooms do not work that way. They require facts. They require timelines. They require witnesses. They require evidence that survives more than outrage. I turned back to Karen M's Whitmore. I said, "You claimed this court humiliated you, but the evidence shows you created a confrontation, recorded it selectively, posted it publicly, and then accused others of conduct the cameras do not support. Karen shook her head. You don't understand what it felt like. I understand exactly what the evidence shows, I said, and that was the point. A courtroom cannot punish someone because another person felt embarrassed by being corrected. The law does not exist to protect pride from consequences. I ruled in favor of Emily Dawson and the courthouse staff named in Karen's complaint. Karen's claims were dismissed. I ordered sanctions for filing a knowingly misleading complaint, referred the online harassment evidence for further review, and instructed that the threatening comments attached to Karen's post be preserved. Karen's face hardened, but Emily's face softened. She did not smile. This was not a victory that felt joyful. It was the kind of relief that comes when a lie finally stops chasing you. Before the hearing ended, I addressed the courtroom. I said that humiliation is a serious word. It should never be used carelessly. Real humiliation can wound people deeply. Real abuse of authority must always be examined. But false accusations do their own kind of damage. They make it harder for real victims to be believed. They turn ordinary correction into alleged cruelty. They turn public anger into punishment before truth has even had a chance to speak. Karen looked away. For once, she had no performance left. The bailiff escorted her out quietly. No shouting. No final dramatic speech. Just a woman leaving a courtroom after the cameras she did not control told the story she could not rewrite. Emily remained seated for a moment after everyone stood. Rachel Morgan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. And I remember thinking that sometimes justice is not about restoring everything that was damaged. Sometimes it is about stopping the damage from continuing. I have presided over many cases where people came in demanding sympathy. But sympathy without truth can become dangerous. Karen Whitmore claimed she had been humiliated. But the CCTV showed something else. It showed entitlement. It showed manipulation. It showed a person who believed that being told no was the same as being attacked. And seconds after that footage appeared, the story she built collapsed in front of everyone. That is the lesson I want you to remember. Not every loud accusation is truth. Not every emotional video shows the full moment. And not every person claiming to be humiliated is telling you what happened before the camera started recording. Sometimes the truth is not in the tears. Sometimes it is in the footage they hoped no one would see.